Bruce Lipton has shown us that thoughts and emotions are not isolated events, but signals that reach the cells, altering genetic expression and reorganizing biology. When mind and heart enter coherence, the body responds like a finely tuned instrument. Each cell vibrates in harmony with the new frequency. It is the biology of belief manifesting in living form. Joe Dispenza describes this experience as the instant when brain and heart harmonize. The autopilot dissolves, and the nervous system begins to operate in another state. What we feel as clarity, tingling, or deep calm is not chance. It is the physiological signature of a realignment between consciousness and the field of possibilities. Anyone who has lived this rare moment knows what we mean. Suddenly, time seems to slow down, the body grows silent, and there is a sense of absolute belonging. It is not illusion. It is consciousness itself adjusting to the invisible fabric that sustains life. These moments are not exceptions, but portals, invitations for resonance to cease being a flash and become a state of being. The metaphor is clear. Think of a crystal that remains still until a precise note is struck. The moment that frequency reaches it, it vibrates, shimmers, and shines. The same happens with us. Consciousness is the crystal. Resonance is the precise note that makes us vibrate in tune with life. And here arises the invitation. What if that sensation were not a fleeting accident? What if it were an access code, a sign that you can choose to live in constant harmony with the field? This video is a dive into that path, the discovery of how to transform occasional sparks into a continuous flame of resonance. Many people confuse resonance with coincidence. They think that the unexpected shiver, the sudden clarity, or the calm that arises without explanation are merely random sensations, products of chance. But resonance is not casuality, it is dialogue. It is the body recognizing that something at some level has entered energetic coherence. The difference lies in the quality of the experience. A coincidence may pass unnoticed, leaving no trace. Resonance, however, carries density. It touches the body, organizes thoughts, alters the emotional state. It is as if, for an instant, life itself realigned to show that you are tuned to a specific frequency. This phenomenon is less about the mind thinking and more about the body feeling. Resonance is perceived as a physical sign, heat, tingling, expansion in the chest, that confirms consciousness has found harmony with the field. It is a silent testimony that something greater is happening, even if it has not yet taken form. We can imagine resonance as a radio station. The signal has always existed, but while the dial was misaligned, the sound arrived distorted. The instant you turn the knob and find the right frequency, the music becomes clear. Life also transmits clear signals when you reach proper alignment. Therefore, quantum resonance is neither superstition nor illusion. It is the body recognizing coherence and consciousness witnessing that meeting. Each time it happens, it is not an isolated flash. It is a reminder that there exists a frequency where you and the field can vibrate as one. When we speak of resonance, we are not describing something mystical without foundation, but a real physiological state. The brain, when trapped in autopilot, operates in high beta waves, associated with stress, vigilance, and the repetition of old patterns. But the instant the mind relaxes and attention opens, alpha and theta waves emerge, linked to creativity, intuition, and internal reorganization. It is at this point that we feel resonance. Joe Dispenza explains that these states are not the product of different thoughts alone, but of a global shift in the body. The heart, in coherence, sends rhythmic signals that harmonize the brain. This communication creates a distinct biochemistry in which hormones of balance and well-being replace those of stress and defense. The entire body then becomes a vibratory antenna. Not only the brain captures information, but the skin, the heart, the peripheral nervous system register and translate frequencies that the rational mind cannot explain. This is why, so often, we feel first and only then understand. This nonlinear mechanism shows that the body does not react only to the immediate present. Research already indicates that the nervous system can register probable futures seconds before they happen, as if it were a radar sensitive to waves of possibility. Resonance, therefore, is this pre-feeling that announces coherence before form itself appears. Science confirms what spiritual traditions always intuited. Resonance is not chance, it is alignment. When brain and heart enter harmony, consciousness opens to perceive dimensions of reality that were invisible in the ordinary state. And what we call a sign is nothing more than the biofeedback of that subtle adjustment. How many times have you felt a sudden shiver, a wave of calm, or a burst of clarity, and then dismissed it as just in your head? This is the most common mistake, treating resonance as an irrelevant coincidence. The habit of ignoring the body and prioritizing only logic makes many missed portals of transformation disguised as subtle flashes. Most people feel it but ignore it, not because they don't notice, but because they were never taught to value these inner signals. Culture has trained us to believe that only what is visible, measurable, and repeatable has value. The invisible has been reduced to chance, when in truth, it is precisely there that life gives its first warnings. The danger of such neglect is remaining trapped in the old pattern. If the body has already announced coherence but the mind dismissed it, the chance to stabilize the new frequency is lost. The flash fades and routine resumes its habitual cycle of repetition. It is like hearing a rare song and switching off the radio before it finishes. By recognizing resonance, you have the opportunity to treat it as a portal. Not an isolated spectacle, but an invitation to align thoughts, emotions, and gestures. What seemed like a curious instant reveals itself as the seed of an entire reality waiting to sprout. Therefore, the mistake is not in feeling too little, but in ignoring what is already being felt. Resonance does not ask for external proof, it asks for attention. When you choose to welcome these moments with presence, you open the chance to turn coincidence into pathway, flash into language, instant into way of life. Consciousness may hesitate, but the body rarely errs. Before the mind forms explanations, the body already registers when something has shifted in the field. This is why resonance manifests through specific physical markers, functioning as silent signatures of alignment. One of the most common signs is tingling, as if tiny electric currents run across the skin. Another is warmth in the chest, often accompanied by a sensation of expansion. There is also sudden mental clarity, when thoughts organize in seconds, and the lightness of time, as if the clock lost its relevance in the presence of the moment. These experiences should not be seen as anomalies. They are physiological responses to states of coherence. When heart and brain enter harmony, the nervous system registers the shift and sends signals that we translate as subtle sensations. The body, in this sense, is living testimony that consciousness has attuned to something greater. Recognizing these signatures is crucial to avoid confusing resonance with states of agitation or anxiety. While anxiety contracts and accelerates, resonance expands and organizes. It may bring intensity, but it is an intensity accompanied by serenity, the right weight of sensing that something true has been revealed. By learning to identify these markers in the body, you stop depending on external signs to validate what you feel. Biology itself becomes your compass. And each tingling, each silent expansion in the chest, comes to be understood as the intimate language of life speaking directly to you. Each sensation of resonance is more than a pleasant moment. It is a silent crossroads. Imagine a universe with infinite timelines available, each representing a possible future. Resonance is like the internal click that selects one of those channels. The instant you feel it, you are choosing which reality gains strength. This process does not occur in the rational mind, but in the field of the inner observer. When you enter a state of coherence, your attention, emotion, and body align, and consciousness collapses a probability into reality. What seemed like just a shiver or sudden clarity is, in truth, a vibrational decision being made. The radio metaphor helps to understand this. You can turn the dial and choose any station, but you will only hear clearly the one that corresponds to the frequency you've tuned to. In the same way, your resonance adjusts the internal dial, tuning into the timeline that matches your state of being. This choice, however, is neither final nor irreversible. Each new state of resonance opens the chance to reaffirm the timeline you desire or to slip back into old patterns. The field responds dynamically, always reflecting what you sustain with greater consistency. Therefore, resonance should not be treated as a fleeting experience, but as a decision. Each time you embrace that sensation and act in coherence with it, you strengthen the future you wish to live. and little by little, what was once only possibility becomes presence. Each moment of resonance is not limited to a passing state. It is also training for the brain. Neuroscience shows that whenever we live an experience accompanied by intense emotion, new neural pathways begin to form. And the more we repeat this state, the stronger the network that sustains it becomes. Joe Dispenza describes this as the rule of neurons. Those that fire together, wire together. When you feel resonance, whether in the form of clarity, expansion, or deep gratitude, you are literally activating new circuits in the brain. These pathways become like trails through a forest. The more often they are traveled, the easier they are to cross. The danger lies in treating resonance as nothing more than a fleeting spark of inspiration. If you don't nurture it, the brain tends to return to the old pattern, guided by the comfort of the familiar. It's like opening the door to a new garden and choosing to go back into the dark room out of habit. Conscious practice can prevent that return. Recording the experience, holding the emotion for a few moments longer, translating the feeling into a small, concrete gesture. All of these strengthen neural connections and teach the body to recognize that state as familiar. The new stops being an exception and begins to become the foundation. Thus, resonance and neuroplasticity walk together. One opens the door, the other builds the path. Each time you allow yourself to fully live these moments and integrate them into practical choices, you are literally reshaping the brain to sustain the reality you desire. Every experience of resonance brings a choice: remain in the newly discovered frequency or return to the familiar territory of habit. The body, programmed to seek safety, tends to prefer what is known, even if what is known is pain or limitation. Resonance, on the other hand, points toward the unknown, not as a threat but as expansion. This dilemma shows up in decisive moments. You feel your heart expand before an opportunity, but the mind, guided by fear, quickly lists reasons to retreat. Habit asks for continuity. Resonance invites rupture. Choosing resonance requires courage to sustain the vibration even when there is no external proof. A simple example: someone feels clarity when thinking about moving to another city or accepting a new job. The body vibrates with enthusiasm, but habit reminds them of risks, routines, and guarantees. If they follow only fear, they return to the same cycle. If they welcome resonance, even with discomfort, they open the path to a new timeline. This struggle does not have to be dramatic. With practice, the body learns to recognize resonance as the right weight. Not the anxiety that contracts, but the intensity that expands. The difference is subtle yet clear. One tightens, the other creates space. And it is this creation of space that signals true growth. Therefore, resonance and habit function as two forces in dialogue. Habit offers stability, resonance, evolution. The secret is not to destroy habit, but to teach the body that the new can also become safe. In this way, what once seemed like a rare spark transforms into a state that can be sustained in everyday life. We often imagine that by following resonance, we will be led only along gentle paths filled with pleasant signs. But the truth is that life can also take us through steep climbs. In those moments, the doubt arises: if I'm aligned, why do I feel pain? The answer lies in the difference between suffering that imprisons and pain that transforms. The suffering that imprisons is born of resistance. It is staying stuck in repeated patterns, insisting on clinging to the old familiar even when it no longer serves. That pain is sterile because it creates no space for change. Transformational pain, however, is different. It may be uncomfortable, but it carries within it the seed of the new. The body knows how to distinguish these two experiences. The suffering that paralyzes contracts, weighs down, and drains vitality. Transformational pain, though intense, comes with a sense of expansion, a thread of meaning that sustains the passage. It is the right weight, the one that reorganizes instead of breaking. Resonance sometimes pushes us into this kind of challenge, a choice that demands courage, an ending that opens space for another life, a change that dismantles before it reorganizes. Discomfort is not a sign of error, but of realignment. The field responds to your coherence, even if at first it dismantles old structures. Following resonance along difficult paths is trusting that discomfort is not punishment, but passage. Each step, even heavy, is part of a greater dance, where consciousness learns to sustain broader frequencies, and it is in this sustenance that the new establishes itself as stable reality. Resonance does not need to be a rare spark that appears unexpectedly. It can be cultivated, nurtured, and gradually become a baseline state. For this, it is not necessary to resort to complex practices, but to simple gestures that expand inner listening and stabilize coherence. Breathing is one of the most direct keys. Inhaling deeply and exhaling slowly teaches the body to slow down. This rhythm creates space for the mind to quiet down and for the heart to find cadence. In just a few cycles, it is already possible to feel the frequency organize itself more clearly. Another practice is conscious pause. Setting aside a few minutes to simply observe the sensations of the body, without judging them, allows the subtle signals of resonance to become perceptible. It is in this brief silence that tingling, chest expansion, or mental clarity can be recognized as messages rather than noise. Writing down sensations also amplifies the process. By putting into words what was felt, you anchor in the tangible something that might otherwise be lost to forgetting. This intentional repetition transforms each moment of resonance into strengthened memory, training the brain and heart to access this state more easily. Over time, these gestures cease to be isolated practices and begin to form a way of life. Resonance then stops being a passing visitor and becomes a stable dwelling, a state in which body, mind, and consciousness meet to create reality in harmony with the field. Resonance is not limited to solemn moments of meditation or to major life decisions. It also manifests in everyday details, like an invisible thread guiding each step. It can be an unexpected meeting that feels scripted by destiny, a coincidence that connects distant conversations, or a spontaneous choice that later reveals itself as precise. These signs are not whims of chance. They are expressions of life's subtle language, showing that you are in tune with the field. When the internal state vibrates in coherence, the world around you begins to organize itself naturally, almost inevitably, as if reality were responding to the exact tone you emit. Learning this language is more about feeling than deciphering. It is not about interpreting every event as a rigid instruction, but about recognizing the thread of meaning running through daily life. It is noticing when a conversation brings clarity, when a gesture opens a path, when a simple decision carries the weight of a portal. The practice, then, is not to chase signs, but to follow them with trust. It is like walking a trail lit by small torches. Each light shows only the next step, but together they reveal the entire path. In this way, resonance becomes an existential compass, not a fixed map, but a living direction that unfolds in motion. When you choose to live attentive to this language, life ceases to be a set of accidents and becomes a continuous dialogue. Resonance in daily life is like a whisper that says, "We are together." And each time you follow this invisible thread, the certainty grows clearer that the field is responding to your frequency. Bruce Lipton shows us that every emotion sustained with consistency alters not only the mind, but also the body at its foundation. The repetition of emotional coherence reprograms cells and even genes, creating a biology that expects new results. Resonance, then, stops being an occasional visitor and becomes a stable physiological state, inscribed in the very memory of the body. Greg Braden reminds us that ancient traditions already understood resonance as a form of active prayer. It was not about asking for something external, but about feeling as if it were already real. This vibration of the already is does not persuade the universe to give, but organizes the field to reflect the state sustained with authenticity. The synthesis is simple and powerful. Resonance is not chance, it is language. It does not appear to distract us, but to align us. It is not a fleeting spark, but a silent code revealing the constant dialogue between consciousness and the quantum field. So, a final invitation. Ask yourself, what word or image translates the resonance I already feel emerging within me? It might be peace, trust, clarity, or even a nameless sense of expansion. By recognizing this inner symbol, you are already beginning to give form to the invisible. And remember the metaphor. Occasional sparks can become steady fire. Each flash of resonance is a spark. Each conscious practice is the breath that feeds the flame. By sustaining this flame in the body and in presence, you illuminate not only your own path, but also that of everyone walking around you.